Varisha, we are live now.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to our first session of the series Uncloaking Individuality, brought to you by NSA NEDVT. Today we have with ourselves our esteemed guest Iza Zaman, who is dignified alumni of NUST Islamabad with a distinction received masters from Carnegie Mellon University. As an ardent entrepreneur, she is the founder of Shadiana, a startup that provides a one-stop solution for all the wedding and photography hassles. Today, she'll be discussing with you all a few tips regarding resume building. Assalamu alaikum, Iza. How are you?
I'm good, Vaisha. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good as well. And so, Iza, would you like to share a PPT or something regarding resume building?
Yes, sure. Let me just share my screen and let me know when it's visible.
Sure.
It says screen sharing has been disabled. If someone can enable that.
One second. Can you share it now?
Check. No.
Please try now to share
Yeah,
your screen.
I can share it now. Let me know if the screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone, and today I'll be talking about resume building. A lot of the content that I'll be talking about is actually borrowed from my grad school, which is Carnegie Mellon from the US. Teacher source we mentioned here. If you want to go to it yourself for later as a resource, you can definitely do that. It's a very helpful resource. So starting off with why are resumes and cover letters important? So since a lot of you are students right now and would probably be applying to university, to jobs or internships now or maybe in a couple of years, resume is a summary of what you've done professionally. So for an employer, it's your first impression. And of course you'd want that to be good if you want to get that job, that dream job that you're thinking of. So resume बिल्कुल एक summary सी होती है. I'm sure a lot of you must have heard the word. Some of you might even have a resume, which is great. Resume जितना जल्दी आप बनाएं, जब भी time मिले, don't be too daunted कि बिल्कुल perfect होना चाहिए शुरू में. Get started and just so it summarizes your skills that you currently have and you can keep updating it. So in a nutshell, it prepares you for any job opportunity, any internship. You might think कि मैंने अभी नहीं apply करना, summer में करना है, but you never know. And also because अब remote internships or remote jobs इतनी common हो गई हैं कि even if you are a student right now, chances are you might be able to apply for internships, part-time and remote. Even in our company Shadiana, we have a lot of interns working with us, student interns, जो अपने classes भी साथ ले रहे होते हैं. So the point is, it's a good idea to start preparing for a resume for any opportunity that might come. Then moving on, what we'll be talking about is in this session an overview of what a resume should be like. How can you use your resume to get the interview? On average, resumes are reviewed for 20 seconds. So that's a very short period of time. उसी से related कुछ basic rules होंगे that it should, for example, be only one page in length. ये एक recommended length है. ज़्यादा थोड़ा US में ये trend ज़्यादा है कि one page की हो, because just like I said कि 20 seconds अगर लोग आपकी CV देख रहे हैं, they don't have the time to flip pages अगर बहुत paragraphs लिखे हुए हैं. So you have to be very careful about what goes on that page. Then a few other basic rules about resumes. they should be in order of relevance. For example, you don't want to talk about your badminton or table tennis skills at the top. You would probably want to put your education if it's relevant to the job opportunity that you're applying for, or your skills at the top, or whatever it is that is relevant to the position. If you're applying for sports, then maybe the extracurriculars or the sports become relevant. But look at what are you applying for and what's relevant for that. Try to keep that on the top. Then font should be easily readable. You don't want to use fancy fonts that nobody has seen before, which are hard to read, just for easier readability, ताकि employer को ये ना हो कि समझ ही ना आ रही हो क्या लिखा हुआ है. So it's a good idea to stick to, you know, very familiar fonts like Times New Roman or Calibri, जो कि बहुत commonly use होते हैं. The font size should also be very standardized. 10 या 12 का font जो normally use हो रहा होता है, it's readable, it's not too big. You'll be able to fit in an adequate amount of content with that font size. Then there should also be margins. You don't want कि बहुत clutter हुआ हो page पे, एक जरा सी भी white space ना हो. You do want to keep margins ताकि एक neat look आए resume. And then some pronouns I, me, my should not be used. You can just, मैं अभी आगे बात भी करूँगी कि कैसे you can talk about how to write the bullet points or the content in your resume. And like I said earlier, it should be 1 page in length, mostly because nobody has the time to read a lot of pages. So try to fit as much content in the first page as you can. Then a big thing that puts off a lot of people, अगर आपके कोई spelling errors हैं, उससे एक ये feeling आती है कि sloppy सी feeling आती है कि if someone cannot fix basic grammar या basic spelling, जो कि word में या अगर आपने Grammarly की extension install किया, उसमें आपको वैसे ही वो highlight कर देता है कि this spelling is not right. तो as your first impression, अगर ये जा रहा है कि if this person has earned a bachelor's degree and they can't spell this word right, so that's not the impression you want to give. You do want to show that you're disciplined, that you know what you're doing, that you can put a good image of yourself in front of the employer. और काफी दफा ऐसे होते हैं जब आप खुद लिख रहे होते हैं ना, तो बहुत बेसिक से एरर्स आपकी नजर से गुजर जाते हैं, सिर्फ इसलिए क्योंकि आप इतने इन्वॉल्व होते हैं उसमें कि आपको नहीं आइडिया होता. तो एंड वन ऑप्शन कुड बी, जब आप लिख लें या तो उसको कुछ अर्से बाद दोबारा देखें विद अ फ्रेश सेट ऑफ आइज, और इफ यू थिंक यू नो योर स्पेलिंग आर नॉट दैट गुड, व्हिच इज आल्सो okay, अगर आपको लग रहा है कि maybe you are not good at proofreading, get a friend or someone who's good at it to do it for you, so that when you send it to the employer तो एक अच्छे format में जाए. Then there are some other tips. Do not use italics or underline. I personally think it's a personal preference, and if you can, the idea of a resume is to get you the interview. When you're applying for a position, you make your case by submitting your resume. So if italics and underline gets you the interview, I think that's fine. Then you can also you can use bold font to highlight your name and sections of your resume that are important. For example, अगर आपको लग रहा है कि maybe आपका GPA बहुत अच्छा है, तो maybe you want to highlight that by bolding it. Or maybe if you know you got a distinction that you're proud of, that you think employer अगर ये देखेगा they'll be impressed. So those are some of the things that you can highlight by bold कर सकते हैं, या other things that you think can highlight them. The next very important thing is to tailor the content to fit the job. I think एक गलती के लिए हम लोग करते हैं कभी कभी कि एक रेज्यूमे बनाया होता है, जो भी जॉब आए उस पे उसी रेज्यूमे से अप्लाई कर देते हैं. If you're short on time, it's understandable. Sometimes you don't want to put in the effort कि अब मैं हर एक के लिए क्या नया नया बनाऊं. लेकिन if you really want to increase your chances of getting that interview, I would recommend, अगर आप UI UX designer हैं for example, और अगर job description में लिखा है कि you need Figma की skill चाहिए आपको, Photoshop, Canva, whatever the skills are, तो try to put them first. जो भी relevant चीजें हैं, जो आपने design के projects किए हैं, फिर अगर आप design की job के लिए apply करें, put them first, put those skills first. Try to reuse the keywords that are being used in the job description. Why? Because as an employer, अगर मैं देखती हूँ कि अगर मुझे data analyst चाहिए और किसी के resume में लिखा हुआ है कि वो CS का बंदा है, उसको Python आती है, उसने projects किए machine learning में, I'll be like, okay, maybe he'll be a good fit. But if someone says data analyst, worked this project done in data analytics, then I'll be like, okay, he's a good fit because that's what I'm looking for. Try to reuse जो keywords job descriptions में use हो रहे हैं. Tailor your resume when you're applying for that job. Try to include those keywords. Try to put those projects as students. I think हम लोग हर semester में काफी projects करते हैं और pretty much हर subject related कर रहे होते हैं, हर area related. तो जिस तरह की job के लिए आप apply कर रहे हैं उस तरह के projects उस resume में डाल दें ताकि जब employer देखे he can see that you have the skill set to do that job. Then coming to what sections can you include in your resume? Some very standard sections. You start with your name, email, phone number, LinkedIn URL. अगर आपने LinkedIn profile बनाई हुई है, अगर नहीं बनाई हुई, I will also recommend to create a profile on LinkedIn. Student life में it's a good time. आप अपने प्रोफेसर्स को ऐड करें, आप यूनिवर्सिटी के अपने स्टूडेंट्स, फेलो स्टूडेंट्स को ऐड करें, and you can also, LinkedIn is a great way to connect with a global audience. So if you think you need a referral to Google, find people who work at Google, find Pakistanis who work at Google, find former NED alumni who work there and contact them. LinkedIn पे people respond. So it's a good idea to create that. थोड़ा सा मैं off topic हो गई, लेकिन header में ये वाली सारी चीजें होनी चाहिए, and also email, जो email address है. If you have an email address like princess@hotmail.com, I would recommend updating it to a more professional email address because that's also your first impression that the employer is seeing. Make an email address that's, that's simpler to type, simpler to for anyone to understand and does not give a bad impression of you. I'll give an example. मेरा एक email address था जिसमें which was a little complicated. वो मेरा university का email address था और उनका standard कुछ ऐसा था 13BESE करके आगे वो था. तो it was degree का नाम, फिर first name, something like that. तो one of the jobs I applied for, I thought they did not accept me. मुझे लगा कि सबको acceptance emails चली गई और मुझे नहीं मिली, तो I thought I did not make it. Turned out they had typed my email wrong. Why? Because it was just वो इतना complicated सा email था कि anyone, unless you copy paste it, people can have typing errors. So you want to reduce those chances. You want to keep a simpler email. Phone number के लिए I would recommend, अगर आप for example पाकिस्तान में jobs के लिए apply कर रहे हैं, then 0300 is fine. But if you're applying abroad, you might want to add +92 just to help them, just to indicate that it's an international number, or so that they can contact you. And then coming to the next section, which is education. Education में whatever your degree is, whatever your expected date of graduation is. What some people do is कि अगर मैं आज resume बना रही हूँ और मैं 3rd year में हूँ, तो मैं लिख दूंगी Bachelor's of Software Engineering, May started in September 2019 to present. You can easily replace that present with your expected graduation date. It can be May 2023. It can be in the future. Helps the employer assess when are you going to graduate. क्योंकि अगर आप full time role के लिए apply कर रहे हैं, they want to know that. They want to know कि अच्छा ये बंदा अभी तो पढ़ रहा है, when are they graduating? So present को replace I would recommend with your graduation date. Education में एक और चीज लोगों का अक्सर question आता है, should we include our GPA in it? So GPA, a resume is for you to get an interview. If you have a good GPA, I do think and you think employer को ये पता चलेगा, तो it will signal that you can be a good candidate. It will be a good idea to include it. If you think maybe it might not work in my favor, so maybe you don't want to include it. Another thing is there are students who are good at certain subjects. They have A's in certain subjects and not in all. So overall GPA की शायद उतनी अच्छी reflection ना हो. So the idea is to signal you can do the job. So in that case, you might want to say education this, coursework this, or coursework के अंदर जो subjects है, and with the grade. You can mention your grade in those subjects there. Then coming to education के बाद relevant experience, जैसे मैंने पहले बात की कि जो भी job की requirements है, internship की requirements है जिस पे आप apply करें, you want to include things that you've done that are similar to that role. So for example, I'm sure as students हम बहुत projects करते हैं हर semester में, लेकिन अगर आप data science के role के लिए apply कर रहे हैं, तो probably आप machine learning वाले projects उस उस वक्त इंक्लूड करना चाहेंगे उस रेज्यूमे में इफ यू आर अप्लाइंग फॉर दैट रोल। और अगर आपको कोई सो दैट्स मोर अराउंड एकेडमिक प्रोजेक्ट्स आई थिंक। उससे पहले जो रेलेवेंट एक्सपीरियंस इफ यू हैव डन इंटर्नशिप्स इन दैट डोमेन पहले तो इंक्लूड देम एज वेल। Then you should also talk about your skills that you have, टेक्निकल स्किल्स कौन सी, अगर आप कोडिंग कर रहे हैं कौन सी लैंग्वेजेस आपको आती हैं, कोडिंग लैंग्वेजेस, या कौन से टूल्स से आप फेमिलियर हैं, इफ यू नो पाइथन, इफ यू नो रिएक्ट, जो आपको स्किल्स आती हैं वो इंक्लूड करें। एंड देन लैंग्वेजेस इज वेल, इफ यू आर बाइलिंगुअल, इंग्लिश और उर्दू आपको दोनों आती हैं, सो दैट्स अ गुड थिंग। जितनी ज़्यादा लैंग्वेजेस अगर और भी आती हैं and you think it's relevant, you can include those as well. Coursework is again to signal कि आपने जो required job है, you can do it. The last part of it is service and leadership. A lot of companies look for all-rounders. All-rounders are people who are good at soft skills as well. So this is an area, service and leadership or extracurriculars, कि आप एक ऐसा section रखें जिसमें आप other than what technical skills you bring, you mention the soft skills you have. For example, communication skills, if you're a debater, if you are good at sports, if you are good at leadership, whatever these experiences are, or if you have won any awards, this is also a section where you can include those. Okay, if you were, for example, the best chess player in your batch, or any such achievement that you have, it's a good place to include those as well. Then coming to bullet points, कि जब आपने work experience mention करना है, it's a good idea to mention it in bullet points, because it's easier for the employer to scan it that way. Longer paragraphs are harder to read. So, but of course, writing bullet points can be a little challenging. You have done a ton of stuff at your internship, at your project. How do you summarize it or condense it into a bullet point? Uske liye, I do talk about a few strategies. When you talk about it, try to use actionable verbs, assertive verbs that showcase your skill set. For example, instead of saying, did research on compliant agencies. Now, did research does not, sound as professional, as impactful, but if you use a stronger action word like analyzed and researched, so that makes it more impactful. There are a list of these verbs. आप Google करें, आपको मिल जाएंगे. You don't have to think, बहुत ज़्यादा सोच के अपना brain energy इतनी invest करने की भी ज़रूरत नहीं है. There are lots of lists of these words जो आप देख सकते हैं online and use them in your bullet points. Then starting with the action verb, provide context of कब किया आपने, analyzed and researched, what is it that you did. जैसे इधर example में दिया हुआ है, the impact of the improper payment elimination and so on. The context, what you did, and then a very important thing is क्या हुआ उससे, उसका impact क्या था, result क्या आया. So इधर जैसे उन्होंने किया है, and identified 15 non-compliant agencies accounting for a deficit of, कि उन्होंने इतना बड़ा deficit identify किया. So you do want to talk about कि I were next अगर हम slide देखें, यहाँ पे दो examples दिए हैं. In the first example, it says acted as development chair for student organization and managed annual fundraising event. So the issue with this first one is it just talks about what you did, does not talk about what the impact was. जब आपने fundraising event organize किया, what happened with that? What was your leadership like? And acted is again not that strong an action where इसी को अगर हमने rephrase करना हो, so in this second version, it says manage logistics and planning for fundraising event for 75 active members. थोड़ा आपको magnitude पता चल रहा है कितने लोग involved थे, and guests resulting in. Now this talks about the outcome या impact क्या हुआ उसका. So it says and resulting in a $2,000 donation. So shows that you just did not only work, but it had a huge impact. So you do want to include an outcome with that bullet point. Whenever you worked as an intern, you automated a process that resulted in saving 75 hours per month of manual work or something, कि आपका impact क्या आया उस चीज का. So that pretty much covers how to write bullet points. इससे पहले हमने बात की what sections to include. Now I'll talk a little bit about some do's and don'ts of a resume. So like I've spoken earlier, कि जो भी आप qualifications mention करें, tailor them to the position that you're applying for and make sure everything on your resume supports it so that when an employer is looking at it, they have an easier decision to make. Focus on the employer's needs of for the position. Employer को क्या चाहिए? You bring a lot of skill set. आप इतने courses पढ़ते हैं, आपके पास हर एक का एक थोड़ा बहुत knowledge होती है. But what does that employer need? Because they want to hire according to their requirements. Then it also says to emphasize what you have done. What you have done, जैसे हमने results की बात की, mention the results you have achieved, not just कि काम क्या था. Talk about what impact did it make. And be relevant. These are all the things I think we've also previously talked about. And some don'ts. Do not lie on your resume. Do not lie in life, I would say, because lies get caught and then it leaves a very bad impression. So resume mein chances are आपसे उसके बाद वो कोई भी scrutiny होगी. It will leave not only a bad impression of you, but also the organization you're from, the school you're from. Okay, उनके बच्चे तो ऐसे होते हैं. So try not to lie. Be honest, and that'll be better in the long run. Short run वो जो है shortcuts ना यूज करें. फिर जैसे पहले बात की कि प्रूफ रीड जरूर करें, क्योंकि उससे तो इंस्टेंट बुरा इंप्रेशन पड़ता है कि if this person cannot present themselves well in a on a piece of paper that they probably send to every employer, will they be a good addition to our organization? Do not use lengthy phrases, sentences, or paragraphs. People don't have the time to read. They only have 20 seconds. So try to make the most out of those and keep your bullet points brief and not too lengthy. एक और चीज यहाँ लिखी है, do not include a photograph of yourself. I think this applies more to US. वहाँ का जो resume का format है, I do think I think Europass एक और format है जो यूरोप में यूज होता है, and वहाँ पे people you have to include your picture. So I think it depends on the region you're applying for, and you might want to, if you're applying outside of Pakistan, you might want to see कि वहाँ का क्या standard है. एक और चीज यहाँ लिखी हुई है कि do not list your high school information just because it becomes irrelevant for a lot of cases. But I do see some people who list it, who have done really well in high school, and it also creates an impact. So again, the idea is to get you the interview. These are guidelines, but they're not set in stone. If you think something works well for you, you can include that. Then जो हमने पहले बात की कि do not use pronouns, abbreviations इसलिए भी कि you might be familiar with something, but the person who's reading it, अगर वो familiar नहीं है, तो the point would not get conveyed. Do not repeat action words. जो verbs हैं, there's a long list of verbs, so be sure to go through it. अगर आपने एक use कर लिया है, try to use multiple different use करें just to ताकि वो redundant सा ना लगे resume. That's pretty much it from my side, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am. It was really vast and such a wonderful presentation. I hope that helps with almost all the questions we have. One thing I want to ask that you said do not add references. So, like, what do you mean by that? What kind of references we should not add? If you
Right.
could-
Right. So I think references की बात जो है कि some people include कि references can be provided if asked. I think that's fine to add. But if you're providing someone's personal details, जैसे usually, for example, the people I would go to for reference, my managers or my teachers, you उनकी अगर personal information, उनकी contact details वगैरह इस तरह जा रही हैं resume में, तो I think there are privacy concerns related to that, and generally it's not required. References can always be provided when asked for. So other information is more important to include. That's just about you.
Adding references like does not put a bad impact on the employer, right? Or does it?
As an employer, जो मेरा अपना एक्सपीरियंस रहा है, बुरा इम्पैक्ट उस तरह से नहीं पड़ता, बट looks a little bit irrelevant to me personally. And like I said, these are more US based things जो भी मैंने इनमें मेंशन की. तो चांस could be कि यहाँ पे अगर आप करें तो it could be a different experience and it might work for you. So if that happens, you can definitely include that.
Okay, thank you so much. Handing over the session to Alyan Siddiqui, my co-host. He'll continue from here onwards. Over to you, Alyan.
Assalamu alaikum. Hope everyone is doing fine. Acha, now I have a number of questions which might seem silly to you, but obviously we are beginners, so these are the questions. Now the first thing is that many of the people, many students understand that by watching some videos that how to write the resume, what are the guidelines for the subparts, but they get really confused when it comes to writing stuff. Like the first, they don't really have an idea about a resume, and they ask that why isn't our degree enough? So what would be its appropriate?
Right. So if I'm an employer और मैंने एक job के लिए hire करना है and I float this job description, like I said, I'm looking for a data scientist. और मैं NED आती हूँ और मैं कहती हूँ कि I'm looking for a data scientist. Now probably जो लोग computer science पढ़ रहे हैं, they're all on paper qualified for this. How do I select between them? Who do I hire, right? So for that, I need to know. My ideal candidate would be someone who's familiar with data science, जिसने कोई project किया है, जिसका कोई past experience रहा है, and that information will be in a resume. Most jobs and internships will require you to provide a resume that is a professional overview of whatever you've done professionally and whatever skills you have. So when you're applying with for a position and you're competing with so many people, that is what will get you the interview. So your degree is good and it'll definitely help you, but employers want to know what skills do you have, what soft skills do you have, and that information, just by telling that you studied X and X from this university, does not convey that.
Right. So next question is, there are people asking that can they make their resume colorful or should it be black and white?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? मुझे इतना clear समझ नहीं आया.
I'm doing myself. People are asking that can we make our resume colorful or should it be black and white?
Right. So, like I said, the purpose of a resume is to get you the interview. अगर आपके resume पे polka dots हैं and that gets you the interview, include them. अगर तो you think it's not getting you the interview, then maybe you don't want to include them. That said, generally in a lot of places, if not black and white, somewhat muted या decent sort of modern किस्म के designs होते हैं जिनमें बहुत ज़्यादा colorful नहीं होता. It's not too hard for the people to read, just so it's not distracting. ये ना हो कि उनकी attention design पर जाने लग जाए कि ओ ये क्या लिखा हुआ है या पढ़ा नहीं जा रहा. So you don't want to do that. But if you know adding color is getting you the interview, then go ahead.
Right. So this is a question that, for example, there are obviously different professions, and can we use the same format, the same procedure for writing a resume for every profession or not? Is it different?
Right. जो अभी मैंने format बताया, it will apply to a lot of professions. The template will be similar कि you want to include details, name, contact number, those things, work experience, projects, skills, and जो भी बाकी आपके extracurriculars हैं. For it applies to a lot of professions. What I will say though is, जैसे maybe एक point पे I was applying for two completely different types of positions. One was more policy and another one was more technical. I had two different resumes, जिसमें एक में सिर्फ policy की बात हो रही थी और दूसरे में सिर्फ टेक्निकल बात हो रही थी. तो तो that says कि अगर different profession के लिए you do want कि उस profession की relevant चीजें आप add करें.
Right. Now, there's another question that, for example, a person is applying for a job of some kind of a profession, and he applies in two different companies. One is a multinational company, and the other one is not well-known company. So, should he do some changes regarding the respect of any industry, or should he just go with the format?
Right. जितना जो मुझे क्वेश्चन समझ आया है, it meant कि one is a big multinational company and the other one is a smaller company, and if the same resume can be used for both. Is that correct?
Yes.
ठीक है. For this, like I said earlier, कि what matters more is what is the employer looking for. अगर दोनों सेम पोजीशन के लिए हायर कर रहे हैं, दोनों को सेम स्किल्स चाहिए, then the same resume can work. But if one जो आप मल्टीनेशनल में अप्लाई कर रहे हैं, उन्हें चाहिए एंड्रॉयड डेवलपर, एंड जो स्टार्टअप या स्मॉलर कंपनी है उन्हें चाहिए रिएक्ट डेवलपर, तो फिर दोनों के रेज्यूमेस में you do want to differentiate, you do want to tailor the multinational one to include more of Android related things that you've done, जो projects आपने उससे related किए, skills में भी आप पहले Android लिखें, just to emphasize on जो वो require करें, और जो दूसरी कंपनी ने जो अपनी रिक्वायरमेंट दी है आप उस रेज्यूमे को उसके अकॉर्डिंग टेलर करें.
Right. Next question is, what is the worst resume mistake in your opinion that people do often do?
Right. I personally don't think there's a worst mistake, but there's some don'ts. जैसे मैंने कहा था कि if you don't proofread your resume and if someone like me is reading, I'd probably not like कि अगर बहुत basic से errors हो रहे हैं and there is another resume जिसने बहुत बिल्कुल perfect लिखा हुआ है, तो I'd probably choose that one and offer them the interview. And a lot of employers tend to do that. It's a major turn off for a lot of people. Proofread ज़रूर करें. That's one. And उसके अलावा include the relevant skill set, try to tailor it. Those are some other things, and don't try to write बहुत one page 3-4 pages per मत लेके जाएं. Stick to one page, don't make it too long.
Right. The next question is how to properly channel the keywords throughout the resume. Should we put the keywords in one section or should we just spread them out?
Right. I think this question is probably more around ATS, जो एक system होता है जिसमें जो automated system होता है that reads your resume and then उसकी basis पे candidates automatically filter होते हैं. I personally am not too aware of it. I haven't really tailored my resumes to that. तो इसलिए, and I'm not sure how widely it's used in Pakistan. So I'm not the best person to answer that question particularly.
Right. Now, the next question is how do one make sure that one's resume stands out from the others? Is there any key touch that one can give it resume?
Right. I think जो multiple चीजें जैसे if you have the bullets, so resume का point कोई भी आपको resume देख के most probably instantly job offer नहीं करेगा. Your resume
Right.
needs to be good enough for you to get an interview, and उसके लिए you don't need to stand out too much, right? If you have a well written resume, proper format में लिखा हुआ है, job description के साथ aligned है, आपने उसको tailor किया है, a lot of people don't tailor it and that's a huge mistake. Do tailor it. जो job that will also help you stand out. Okay, the person has put in the effort to show कि हमारी company में how they will be a good fit. And अगर आपने बिल्कुल one page में उसे restrict किया है, you have mentioned everything that was required, I think that should be good enough to help you stand out.
Right. What next question is, what do you think is the reason for the immediate turnoffs of the recruiters?
If a resume is not readable, it's not properly formatted, कोई बहुत pages का है, form readability issues हैं, या proofreading के मसले हैं, spelling के errors हैं, those are some of the turnoffs.
Right. Is there, next question is there a difference between a resume and a CV, or are they the same?
Right. Practically speaking, so there's a theoretical response जिसमें कहा जाता है कि resume is one page, it's very brief, it's just an overview, and उसमें कहा जाता है कि CV is more detailed. उसमें आपका अगर 5-6 साल का experience है, then you'll have multiple pages and it'll list in a lot more detail what you've done. But practically speaking, they're used pretty much interchangeably. If someone's asking you for a CV, they're probably expecting the same thing. जो मैंने personally experience किया है in this industry in Pakistan, if they're asking for a CV or resume, they pretty much mean the same thing in most cases, which is a one-page document that, or a shorter document that summarizes whatever you've done so far.
Right. Now, the next question is, do I need more than one version of my resume?
Yes, you do need more than one version if you are applying for more than one positions. Multiple positions के लिए करें तब भी it's जैसे मैंने पहले कहा एंड्रॉयड और रिएक्ट की एग्जांपल दी थी, इसी तरह ऐसा भी हो सकता है आप डेवलपमेंट रोल के लिए भी अप्लाई करें, डिजाइनर रोल के लिए भी, then you probably need two versions of your resume. And also whenever you're applying to a specific job, you'd want to tailor it further to that company.
Right. Now there are different. We all know that there are different formats of a resume. So according to engineering point of view, what format would be the best? I've heard some formats like chronological or functional or mixed.
Right. I तो और फॉर्मेट्स दो तरह के, chronological में भी इस तरह हो सकते हैं, reverse chronological when you're listing your work experience. That's generally preferred कि अगर जो आपकी latest company है उसके बारे में पहले लिखें, because you're more skilled और ज़्यादा hands on current आपका experience उन technologies या उन domains में जा रहा है, तो that'll be reverse chronological. Same for education. अगर आपने masters किया, that comes first and then bachelor's, just because that's more specialized. और for other accomplishments वगैरह के लिए भी it's mostly preferred. What you did probably in 2012 is of less interest to the recruiter than what you did in 2022.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm aiming for, not me, it's a question. I'm aiming for the business studies. So what kind of important points I should mention in my resume?
Right. So my understanding is business studies के लिए आप your resume is with your application to a school. उस केस में you'd want to see you would want to show us a few things, because for schools it's important that academically either you've performed well or you want to learn new things. So usme you might want to talk about the courses that you've taken and the things you've accomplished while you were in school. अगर आपका prior business experience है, you want to talk about that. और अगर नहीं है, why are you interested? Maybe you want to include a few projects जो आपने business related किए हैं, to show that even if you've not formally studied it before, you've had interest in it. And then those are some of the things that are coming to my mind कि अगर आप business studies के लिए apply करें तो आप business relevant skills जो हों वो mention कर सकते हैं.
Right. Now, there's been many questions regarding that should we mention our previous educations like O levels, A levels, intermediate stuff, and percentages or not.
हाई स्कूल के आपको मेंशन करना चाहिए या नहीं करना चाहिए. अगर तो यू आर एट अ पॉइंट जहाँ पे आपने मास्टर्स भी कर लिया है एंड मास्टर्स के बाद अब आपके मास्टर्स भी एजुकेशन में आ रहे हैं, बैचलर्स भी आ रहे हैं, हाई स्कूल भी आ रहे हैं, तो आई थिंक इन दैट केस बहुत लंबा सेक्शन एक सिर्फ एजुकेशन का जा रहा है, देन मे बी, और वो फिर बहुत पुरानी बात हो जाती है, देन मे बी इट्स नॉट रेलेवेंट. इफ यू आर अ स्टूडेंट, बैचलर्स इज यूजुअली सफिशिएंट बिकॉज दैट्स द स्पेशलाइज्ड स्किल सेट यू हैव. उससे पहले वाला is more general. So for a recruiter, it's not of as much interest. But I will also say this कि when I'm reading CVs और जब मैं देखती हूँ कि किसी के A levels में बहुत अच्छे grades आए हैं, so that does leave an impact. So if you think you've done really well in your FSC or A levels and you want to include those marks, I personally think it's fine to do that if they create a good impression, because remember the goal, it is to get you the interview. So अगर वो चीजें include करके you think it will signal that you are good for that job, or you are a dedicated person, or you can work hard. So include that. Otherwise, they usually take up more space, and you might just be fine by including your bachelor's key education.
Okay. Now, what do I write if I do not have any experience in the job field I'm applying for?
Right. I think that's a very good question. Because as students, that will happen a lot. We don't have a lot of experience जब हम students होते हैं, but what we do have is our projects. जो semester के end पे projects के होते हैं, या जो हमने extra curriculars, या अगर हमने कोई freelance काम किया है, वो चीजें, those are perfectly fine. Employer की expectation नहीं होगी कि if you're fresh out of school, or if you're in third year or second year, तो आपका 2-3 साल का work experience या 10 साल का work experience होगा. They understand you're a student, so they don't expect. What they expect is कि जो आपने as students काम किए, जो आपने projects में काम किए, is that relevant to what we are doing, और बिल्कुल आप scratch से start कर रहे होंगे. So if you can include some of those things, that'll definitely add value to your resume.
Right. And that will include the internships also, right?
Yes, internships as well. Internship qualifies as experience for students.
Right. All right. This might sound as cliche, but what are resume keywords and why should we use them?
Sorry, मुझे question थोड़ा सा कट गया था आवाज.
All right. I'll repeat myself. What are resume keywords and why should we use them?
Resume keywords का आपने पूछा. I think जो keywords की बात हो रही है वो मुझे लग रहा है ATS से related है, and I personally am not as knowledgeable on that.
Okay. All right. Right. Acha. Next question we have here is let's see. Right. Should I post my resume online or not?
Right. I think the answer is it depends. By online, do you mean a Facebook group? Do you mean LinkedIn?
Yes.
If it's LinkedIn, yes, I think adding your resume on LinkedIn is a good idea, क्योंकि जब आप LinkedIn पे job के लिए भी apply करते हैं, the resume gets added, and it's easier as an employer if you're looking. LinkedIn profile भी होती है, but resume is a brief summary. So whenever we are hiring through LinkedIn and we look at the resume, it's very convenient कि हमें वहीं पे सारा पता चल जाता है. So I would recommend adding that on LinkedIn.
Right. Now, there's been a lot of questions regarding the mistakes, and since you already mentioned a number of mistakes, what do you think? What do you think that could be the same worst resume mistake ever that one can do, except the format?
Except the format and proofreading की जो बात की, sometimes फॉर्मेटिंग का ही मेरे जहन में ज़्यादा आता है. जो मिस्टेक्स होती हैं, बहुत लंबे लंबे रेज्यूमेज होते हैं, वो इतने पढ़े नहीं जाते. फॉन्ट्स अगर बहुत अजीब यूज़ हुए हुए हैं, या कलर्स बहुत अजीब यूज़ हुए हैं, वो भी नहीं पढ़े जाते. रेलिवेंट स्किल सेट जो आपका है वो ज़रूर इंक्लूड करें. अगर वो मेंशन नहीं होता, then the resume does not make much sense. Even if you हम लोग कभी in this degree have that skill set, but they don't write it down. So do make sure, make it easy for the employer. Mention in your skills कि कौन कौन सी हैं, और उसी तरह relevant skills कौन कौन सी हैं.
Right. Another question is the resume a requirement for the internees?
In most cases it is. I'm not sure कि intern अब कैसे hire हो रहे हैं. For bigger companies, I know for most cases they have an opening जहाँ पे आपको resume upload करने की option होती है. For smaller companies, काफी दफा referral से भी हो रहा होता है. But even when it's a smaller company or a referral, even when we are hiring bigger companies, it's just easier to know a person कि उनकी क्या प्रोफेशनल क्वालिफिकेशंस हैं. बहुत जल्दी आपको within a minute you can know what skills this person has. So for internships, it is pretty much a requirement in most places. if someone doesn't ask you for a resume and still offers you an interview, you're probably lucky. So I would recommend making a resume if you're aiming to get internships.
Okay. I guess then you have answered all the questions. Are there any few important tips that you will like to add in the last 2 minutes?
No, that's pretty much it from my end. I'd be happy to share a couple of links. एक तो जहाँ से मैंने presentation के लिए material collect किया, वहाँ पर उसी में you'll also find some sample resumes that you can have a look at. अगर आप confused हैं कि हमें किस तरह format करना चाहिए, so that's one resource I'd be happy to share. Another thing I would like to say, because I'm a startup founder and we try to market the startup wherever we can. So I would recommend checking out the startup, shadiana.pk. And if it's possible for you to follow us on Instagram, that will be super duper helpful for us.
Well, that's a must. That's a must for sure. Thank you for spending your time with us, and that'll be for today's video. Your last is
Thank you so much
Thank you
Azam,
so
for your time. It was a wonderful session.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for having me. Very happy to be a part of your session.
Yes, it
thank
was
you,
an honor.
Laura.
Laugh.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Laugh.